I was out with my two brothers and my dad fishing at around 12 in the morning. Me being maybe 12 or 13 at the time, William was older and Jason was younger. We were on a bridge that stood over a large body of water, and I was honestly becoming a bit bored since we had been fishing for the past hour. The only real exciting thing that happened was when my dad hooked a skate. It was a kick watching him struggle to maintain the pole. He had let out a mean steam of curses when his line snapped, signaling his loss in the battle. The area was surrounded by forest and was beautifully lit by the night sky. I would look over the bridge's wall countless times just to see the moon's light reflecting off of the dark, steady waves. The bridge wasn't made of wood, but concrete. It was strange looking. Now that I think about it, instead of being only about 3 feet off the surface of the water, it was maybe 10 or 15. I assumed that it was made for walking or riding across. It was narrow, but just wide enough to fit 3 average people side by side. Upon stating that I wasn't having much fun, William led Jason and I down to a large blackberry bush. It was set just next to the beginning of the bridge, so my dad could still see us. With our group, we had 4 dogs. It seems like a lot, I know, but we currently still have only 2 of our said 4 dogs. Tragedies happen, I suppose. Back to the story. 2 of the dogs are German Shepherds, the dogs we have currently. Other than them, we had a Border Collie and a Foxhound and Muda mix, a very beautiful dog, tall and slender, but with just the right amount of muscle. He was all white with the exception of fall points and freckles. Also, very, very fast. Here's the confusing but necessary part. The female German Shepherd was Charlie, the male German Shepherd was Simon, the Foxhound mix was Buddy, and the Border Collie was Sophie. Okay, now that we've gotten that down, on with the occurrence. We weren't really collecting the berries. It was more of a pick and eat thing. Every now and then, one of us would shout out, startled by the sudden prick of their finger from a thorn. Charlie and Buddy were my personal dogs, leaving Jason with Sophie and my dad with Simon. As I was feeling around for berries with Charlie sitting at my side, Jason left to get my dad some. I turned around to watch him go, Sophie at his heels. Before I could turn back around to face the bush, something caught my eye. Something big. My first thought was that it was a tree, that is, until it turns its head towards me. It locked eyes with me. I felt paralyzed by fear. I barely managed to wave my arm around in William's general direction, trying to catch his attention. He must have noticed as he responded with a quiet yeah. Turning to see what I was looking at, he began to say something, but immediately stopped. All emotion drained from his now pale face. "Who is that?" he would ask me. I could only mumble what. Not that I didn't hear him, no, I was correcting him. This thing was massive. Really, the only color you could see on the creature came from its eyes. They were wide, human-like. From where I stood, they almost looked orange. The rest was basically a silhouette. I could feel the presence of the dog next to us. Charlie snarled, stalking closer bit by bit. I wanted to jump at her, do anything to keep her away from it. Simon was staring intently, as was Buddy, but kept his position in front of William and me. The thing was standing on its hind legs, but looked like a big, hairy dog, at least something with long, pointed ears. It had lengthy fingers, or more than likely, claws. It leaned forward a bit, but not much, almost as if it wanted to intensify its glare, or maybe just to get a better look at us. I jumped at the sound of Charlie snapping her jaws at the thing before bounding towards it. I nearly choked on my breath as Buddy followed her. I frantically looked around for Simon, who was cowering behind William with his head bowed down growling. William started to run faster after them, and I started to cry, from both fear and slight anger. I heaved a breath and willed my lungs to run as fast as I could. William was on the track team and played baseball, but he was the least of my worries, because I was too. It was the fact that we were chasing 2 dogs, and a terrifying animal-like creature. Now that I think back on what I did, I must have been insane. Nevertheless, I chased them in the woods. We eventually slowed to a stop as we saw the dogs ahead of us. They were standing defensively, barking and snarling the cryptid. I couldn't see exactly, but it looked as though the creature was now on 4 legs and smaller. The dogs fell back, as though they had been pushed and scurried away from it as an ear-piercing scream sounded. Buddy took off back to the bridge, where we later found him, and Charlie crouched in front of William and I. The scream sounded strangled, unlike anything I'd ever heard. I had let out a fearful shout before I felt something grab hold of my wrist, which, believe me, did not help my situation. William was trying to pull me along, trying to get us the hell out of there. All 3 of us ran towards the bridge. The whole way there, it felt as though the creature was on my heels, me being in the back by maybe a foot. Once we were free from the trees, we didn't stop. We bolted into the water, William and I. Charlie merely followed, not knowing what to do. I whipped my head around as we stopped and saw nothing but pine. I choked on my tears, feeling both relieved and terrified of what had just gone down. Back on the bridge, we told our dad. He called bullshit, that we were just playing a prank. But you heard the scream, right? We would ask him. He would blow us off completely and continue fishing. He was, and still is, a skeptic. Gotta see it to believe it, is his paranormal motto. I honestly don't know what that thing was, and I don't think I want to. Part of me is curious, but all of me wants to know what I'm dealing with, so I have more information on the subject. I can't be the only one who's seen it. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I haven't told anyone before, simply because they will think I'm crazy. I don't know why all this even began, but what I do remember is when. It was 7 a.m. in the morning. I was all alone in my house, which I share with my family. I was sitting in the dining room while reading a book. I knew that I was alone. I heard someone. I heard my brother's voice. He was calling my name and asking me where I am. I was extremely confused because I checked his bedroom and saw that it was empty. I stood up and walked towards the voice. It was in the hallway. There was nobody there. I suddenly saw someone's shadow. I was so scared I ran out and waited for my bus outside. For the next 2 years, things moved in our house. My bed moved. My bedroom was also colder than everybody else's. I always had a feeling somebody was watching me as I fell asleep, but yesterday, there was something far worse. I fell asleep with a huge feeling of being watched, but I also smelled some kind of cologne, a man's cologne that I have never smelled before. I shook it off and soon fell asleep. Around 3 a.m. in the morning, I woke up gasping for air. I couldn't move, breathe, or even scream. I felt my arms touching my head, neck, my belly and legs. I heard some kind of language being spoken in my ear. I tried so hard to scream, but I wasn't able to. That went on until the morning. They would let me go for 5 minutes and then continue their torture. After they finally let me go, I had a huge panic attack. I didn't sleep. Today I'm scared. I don't want to eat. I see them. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to sleep, and I'm afraid of the dark. My husband and I moved into a house built on an old battlefield ground. This field goes on for miles and miles, then there's nothing but graves. Such a bloody massacre happened a long time ago during the Civil War in Nancy, Kentucky. When we first moved there, strange activity immediately started happening. We began hearing voices outside mumbling to each other. Note that we have no one that lives close to us for miles. We go outside to investigate and find nothing. We go back inside. It starts up again. We try to fall asleep and hear old music, kind of like an old music box. This keeps us awake for some time. We were never able to pinpoint the location of the music. Every there on out, activities increase. We go on outside on our porch and sit. At night, we see shadow figures moving along the trees within the woods. We'd also be in the living room and hear something walking on our front porch often. We run outside to investigate. Nothing there. My body was numb from fear. My husband, trying to act calm, was looking at me. I could tell he was in shock like I was. We knew this was something paranormal, and we are very skeptical people about paranormal stuff too, until this happened to us. It changed everything. A whole new door opened up that we were not familiar with. We thought maybe if we don't think about it much, maybe it would just stop. So living there for a week now, we decided to make a flower garden together and enjoy the beautiful weather. I put some little bunny figurines in the garden, and also little chickens and turtles. That night we started hearing footsteps again on our front porch. This time I told my husband, let's not go out. I was hoping maybe it'd just stop if we just ignored it. It kept going on for a good while. We also noticed it's now pounding loudly on our windows. Okay, we had a candle on the windowsill outside. We lit it nightly to keep mosquitoes away, but we hadn't lit it for days. The pounding was getting aggressive after a few days. I look out the window and the candle was lit. My husband and I were surprised, to say the least. So we went outside to investigate and look at the candle. I noticed that my little chicken figurines in the flower garden were turned upside down. The next night, I put an app on my phone that allows me to capture EVPs in video in low-light situations. My husband thought I was crazy and was skeptical about capturing anything, but I started talking and asking, what do you want and who are you? My EVP app was going off in the direction where my husband was standing. I snapped a picture outside in the dark with my husband posing against the wall. We went inside and reviewed the photo. Amazingly, we saw a dark shadow figure of a man floating behind my husband in old clothes. Now we got proof. We showed it to family and friends, and they agreed something is going on here. The place crept me out so much, we decided to move. I found out later that someone died on that property in a garage fire a long time ago. I don't know if that death is related to the Civil War, or is the cause of our hauntings, or it's the old soldiers still there, or maybe both. What I do know is that strange things happen there. This whole ordeal happened when I was around 10 years old to 13 years old, when I lived in a particular house. The house was quite old. It first belonged to my grandmother when she was younger, and at the time, we were renting from her. Many of my grandmother's antique personal items still occupied the house that had belonged to much older relatives that had passed. The importance of these objects was that objects of those who passed away could channel their energy, and this shadow man I had seen could have possibly been an old relative. He could have even been one that had passed away in my lifetime, since there was actually quite a few deaths of older male relatives whom I still quite miss a lot. The first I was aware of this man, I was around 10 years old. The memory is faint, but I am positive of what I felt and saw at the time. I was in my room with a friend, and we were chatting away when we heard sort of a distinct creaking sound. When we turned our heads, we noticed the shade on a lamp that was on my dresser had somehow flown off of the lamp to a nearby spot on the dresser. Being the young child I was freaked out, and we stayed in the living room the rest of the night. I was about 12 years old, I believe, when I first actually saw the figure, who had done plenty of subtle disturbances throughout the years since my first encounter with it. I had stayed home from school since I was pretty sick and was watching Drake and Josh on television to pass the time. I heard the front door open, and then saw, as well as felt, a tall man out of the corner of my eye passing by the entryway to the TV room which I was in. Automatically I called out, "Hey Dad," thinking he had returned from work early. There was no response. I paused the show, and the house was dead silent. The feeling of the man's presences was gone too. I knew that I had seen something tall and shadow-like walk somewhat quickly past the entryway. I got up to investigate and found that the house was indeed empty. My whole body was shaking, so I did what came to mind. I cuddled up in my blanket on the couch and turned the volume up to try and erase the so prominent fear that had filled me, and waited for my parents to come home. I had seen the shadow man a couple of times after that, each time thinking it was my father, and each time finding out it was not. Those memories are far less prominent in my mind, but are still there. We moved from the house later the next year, and since then, I have not seen nor felt the shadow man. Have you ever seen a shadow figure like this? This is my story of what happened to me at work. I don't know if it's a ghost or anything, but I hope that someone may have opinions. Okay, so I was walking back from giving someone their food to go back to the kitchen. Then I saw a little boy outside of the door. He looked like a normal little kid, so I smiled and walked on. I didn't think anything of it. But then, he was at the drive-thru window. Then again, was back at the door. And so on until the last part. I saw his head at the same time in the door and the window, with a little smile. Then it Well, he went back to one and I saw him running. Then he disappeared into the parking lot. The weird thing about it was 9 p.m. and it looked to be about 5 years old. No adults around. It's not the first time I've seen a little boy appear before. One time I was at home and I'd seen a little shadow boy. I went to tap him on the head because I thought it was my brother. My hand went through his head. Description: around 5. Not pale skin, but not tan either. Bluish gray eyes, sandy brown hair. Wore a striped shirt with gray pants. Cute little smile with a few crooked teeth. Was he a ghost too? Thank you. New Orleans, the Bayou, cemetery tours. Witnessed the devastating effects of Katrina, and right on time to watch my son play college baseball. Then my guest entered into my experience. My first experience started when I captured the most beautiful sunset from home plate facing the swampy area where we were playing. As I looked at the picture, I noticed two orbs. One was quite noticeable, as it was a small ball of light in the bottom of the photo. The second was the strobe light coming from the sun behind the clouds. Okay, I'll get to the best part. So I checked into the Whitney Hotel, located Midtown New Orleans, rich in history. An old bank that is still in use, but is also the hotel that has been renovated with 9 floors of winding halls, leading one to get very confused and turn around, so to speak. Let me mention, the entire time I stayed at this hotel, there was not one other guest ever spotted by myself or my parents. In fact, the only people you saw were the same 5 employees that all seemed to be interacting amongst themselves in an odd sort of way. They were always there. One was the chef, yet never saw one person sitting, eating, or drinking in the restaurant and bar. These same characters were always around, out of nowhere. They were eager to share stories of the hurricane, history of the hotel, and the architecture and other tidbits of the city. What I thought so peculiar was there was nothing ever mentioned of ghosts or hauntings. I will preface this by saying there was a strong sense of something, but I could not quite place my finger on what it was exactly. I finally put it out there and asked, "What about ghosts?" The 2 staff members shared a look and stated, "Oh, you can say that." They shared hearing silverware falling in the middle of the night, sounds from the 100-year-old basement, and the bank vault closing and locking when no one was around. I retired to my room, 611, at around 8 p.m. I noticed the complete quietness of the floor. Again, not one other room guest was around. I laid down and fell asleep. Approximately 2:13 p.m., I became aware of a feeling between my legs, as if I had been punched. I was in somewhere between sleep and wake, and had remembered the feeling in the pit of my stomach that told me someone is in this room. I laid there paralyzed as I tried to rationalize what was happening. Was there someone in my room? Why isn't the spot where it was hit not as excruciating as it should be? There was still the feeling, but no pain, rather a strong pressure feeling. Then I felt the most gut-wrenching, gut feeling, sick to your stomach feeling begin to rise in me. The feeling that someone was there, and this was not going to be good. My heart was racing. I was frozen, unable to roll over to look in the direction where I felt the person was standing. 30 seconds in, I am now fully aware and awake and scared to death. I thought, I need to get control. I can either lay here or take action. At this point, I leaped out of the bed and walked 3 feet to where I felt the person standing, as it was in the direction of the restroom. It was at this point that I swear there was a figure, see-through, dressed in black and white, streaks on the face area. It wasn't a pleasant presence. This feeling I had was of sheer terror. Then it was gone. As I gathered my bearings, slowed my heart, and tried to rationalize what I just experienced, I felt a sort of calm presence come over me. I laid back down, and I instantly fell right back to sleep. I awoke refreshed and wondered why it was so easy for me to fall back asleep. In the past with nightmares, it's always been difficult, not this time. I didn't mention this to anyone for a few days, but that feeling of complete terror, dread stayed with me. I returned to work and shared the experience with a coworker. The fact that it was so real and the feelings it caused me is what prompted me to share my experience, and hopefully can find others with similar stories, so I don't feel like I am crazy. Thanks for reading. I was listening to music one day in a hotel room and was trying to get Wi-Fi to work at the same time when I was horrified by a knock on my door. What was it? I opened it, and it was a weird-looking man who pointed at me. He looked at me and said, "You need to subscribe to Phantom of Darkness's channel." I gasped. I said, "Which channel?" And he was like, "You're stupid." I said, "Phantom of Darkness's channel." Then I realized that it was me the entire time, telling myself in the mirror to subscribe to myself because I'm a narcissist. In my haste, I quickly commented on my own videos, made separate accounts to make it look like I wasn't as lonely. Then I shared the video because even though it was my video, I knew that people would appreciate it if I commented, like, and subscribed, even if I pretended I was another person. You know, I didn't understand it. Maybe it was paranormal activity, or maybe I just wanted to upload a video and wanted people to subscribe to me and wanted to pretend that I was subscribed to other people, including my own channel, in hopes that I looked popular. Well, I don't think I'll ever go back to being popular because I'm the only one who watches my own videos. I love you guys, and I'm saying that to myself because there's nobody who watches my videos. But then again, maybe there are people who watch my videos. Okay, guys, I'm so sorry for that ridiculous skit, but, everything I said is true. Just comment, like, and subscribe, share this video, and happy Independence Day in America. This is a great day to showcase my freedom of speech by saying the weirdest things in the world. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and love you. Good night, good morning, whatever it is.